Well, I'm John Louder. I'm the executive director for PTAA, and I'm joined by Tom Gwyn. And Tom is a principal, and I will let him give you all the particulars with Apartment Dynamics. So, Tom, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Apartment Dynamics?
Fantastic. Thank you, John. Got in the apartment industry because of a pink tennis skirt 20 years ago. And so the next time you meet me, you'll have to ask that story. And it's been a great experience. The camaraderie, the people in this industry, the size of this industry, it blew my mind when I first got in it. And PTAA was sort of my first exposure to the size of the industry working. And the association has grown so much, both in size and in depth of what they provide in 20 years. I'm just blessed to be here.
Thanks, Tom. So we talked a little bit ahead of time about, kind of talking about the value of PTA, or what you perceive as the value of PTAA. And really, this is true for in my mind, of any association. So for an apartment, for somebody in your position, somebody who owns and or manages a portfolio of apartments, what do you see as the value, the core values that PTA provides?
Let's see, John, I think you start with the basics, training and education, and those are very different things. Training is learning how to do a task. Education is how do you think, how do you process? And PTA does both of those well. We have access to local trainers. We have access to national trainers. And through the PTAA, you have the NAA convention. You've got all kinds of, then there's tools that help. So I'd say employee development through the training and education is one item. Mm-hmm. The next really big one, and I can't quantify this one, but employee turnover. Our biggest assets is our team, our employees, our coworkers. And I think that companies that are members of their local associations have lower turnover because the employees are involved in a bigger product. They see more things. They get to go to NAA conventions. They're involved in lobbying. So they really become embedded into the industry and the company. So that's huge. As we all know, turnover has a direct cost on the performance of a property. So it's a win-win-win. And another great one is that we're peers. We're all in this together. The recent COVID crisis, turning the industry on its head and spinning it 3 or 4 times. I don't know that we could have made it through without the industry call that we've been having. It started off every morning and then a couple of times a week, and now we're down to once a week. But it's been fascinating to see how other leaders share their ideas. We share our ideas. We share policies. Together, we have not had to reinvent the wheel. We've improved on the other one's wheels and shared that back and forth. It's just been a lifesaver.
And I will say that from my standpoint, it's been remarkable to watch that. Not every, while I believe that lots of industry groups and lots of groups of people get together and collaborate, I've not ever seen the level of just reaching across the aisle and helping each other. And like you said, it's been very, sometimes you'll see a lot of give and not a whole lot of take, or vice versa. And
right.
And there's been just a phenomenal amount of just sharing, like you said, sharing of ideas, sharing of ups and downs. And it's been really something to watch, something to behold. And I think it's a testament to you and to the other folks on the call who've been willing to do that and enthusiastically willing. It's not like you guys got dragged into this. I mean, you guys,
we didn't even look, we just jumped.
Yeah.
We knew we had to.
Well, and you brought up something that I think is an underappreciated value. And this is kind of, the apartment industry is a little unique in this respect, in that you have these associations that are affiliated with each other. We're not a chapter of the National Apartment Association. Or the Apartment Association in North Carolina. but our leadership has decided to affiliate with those groups. So when you join PTAA, you're automatically a member of the National Apartment Association and the Apartment Association in North Carolina. That's valuable in a lot of different ways. You have access to the networking there. You have access to the education that they develop that we, quite frankly, don't have the capacity to develop, the level of expertise that they have. But then you also have the opportunities like what happened this year. So we happened to be in Washington.
Yep.
You were one of the people. You and Mary were two of the people who were there on the Hill, and that was the last day that Capitol Hill was open to the public before COVID locked everything down. And we were walking around between meetings, and you guys were saying, how are we going to respond to this? This is crazy. What are we going to do? And the call was a direct result of those conversations that happened because everybody was in Washington to advocate.
Exactly. I don't think if we'd had that group synergy, would have even thought of the call. We were all together at
That's exactly right.
and it's like, Doug, yeah, why wouldn't we do that? So and John, you ran it so well. I think you got us all to contribute, to not feel, I don't know what we're talking about here, because none of us knew what we were talking about at the beginning.
Well, I think that, I appreciate you saying that, but I truly, everybody involved, it came in with the right approach and the right mindset. And to be clear, I mean, God, if anybody ever saw this, one of the things in the association world we worry about is getting into trouble for non-competitive practices or,
Sure.
And you guys don't do that. There's no such thing as price setting, price fixing, none of that. It's more about, okay, how are you guys cleaning your facilities to
how do we keep our teams safe? What do you do when a resident is diagnosed? Stuff I never would have thought of, but because of the synergy, we were able to share and manage, and some of our new normals will be practices that we've taken out of those calls.
Yeah. It's really truly the main reason that organizations like PTA exist, is to allow for that kind of, honestly, this is when we earn our keep the most, is when we have trying times like this. And
and John, I think we don't want to lose sight of some of what the association, the basics they offer, that are really, they're hard dollars. The lobbying efforts that we make locally, state level, federal level, it was many years back, but through those lobbying efforts, we got water submetering, instant revenue for properties, and we've gotten court cases, that defined so that we have a guideline and keeps us more professional. And the simple things like a lease, a standard lease that makes it easy to go to court. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah. And thanks for mentioning the lease. I mean, I think that's one of another, I don't think it's underappreciated. I think it's something that we don't talk about that much. But it's a great benefit. And honestly, that's a benefit from our affiliation with the National Apartment Association, because they've thrown a lot of resources into coming up with a standardized lease that works around the country. It's specific to North Carolina, but the bones of it are very similar from state to state. So if you have a multi-state portfolio, you have access to essentially the same process. You have a distinct lease for that state, but how the lease is administered is the same across your portfolio, which is a nice benefit.
Yeah, and legal fees, we're saving on that just right off the bat. So
yeah, you're right.
We could say the PTAA pays for itself in legal fees.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Of course they do. Of course we do.
So why are we thinking about this? Just join.
That's it. That's all you need. So, an interesting part about when we were talking about the collaboration, there's another group of members that we have, and that's the Supplier Partners. And we, and I'd love to hear your take on this. We do all the basics that most trade associations do. We have a trade show. We have a golf event. We have a reverse trade show. We have all these networking opportunities, and those are great. and love to hear you talk about those. But you've also talked in the past about the suppliers who have participated in things like going to Capitol Hill or going to the legislature in Raleigh. So could you talk a little bit about that and the value you see from that?
Absolutely. So, yeah, I had a previous life in purchasing years ago, and there's no way a business can survive without true partners. Yeah, they're not just suppliers; they really are partners. And we've adapted a little saying here at Apartment Dynamics that's surrounded by greatness, and a good part of that are our vendor partners. And I've gotten to know these folks at trade shows, at events, at dinner meetings, and you get to know the person, you get to know what's important to them, and they are also getting to know us. And so it's not just about closing a deal, or it's partnershiping and working for a long haul. I think if I were a vendor, I would want to do business with folks that are members of the PTA. They're already vetted. They're saying that we are a professional organization right out of the bat. You don't have to say, hmm, is this a company I want to do business with? I mean, you're going to be getting a class act. You got access to all the decision makers, from the site managers to the owner operators like myself. You have, by attending the lobbying events, you get insight into what are we scared of? What do we think is happening? Wow, this is kind of neat how all this works together. So again, the partnership, and you don't have to drive. If you're going to a trade show, you don't have to drive to 20 different properties over 200 miles in a range. You get to see everybody at a reverse trade show or a normal trade show. And so it makes life easy. And I think the big winner of all is, whenever we're looking for a new vendor, the first place we look is the PTAA website and see if they're a vendor partner.
And we do appreciate that. And honestly, you guys have referred some folks to us who were not already members, and they've joined as a result of being referred by you and some of our other members. And we found our experiences of those folks come in, they experience immediate success, because they may not have ever heard of us before, but they show up and they say, I was told by some folks at Apartment Dynamics that we need to join, and they do, and then they realize, wow, there's a whole community out there that we can reach via this outlet. So I think there's definitely, it's kind of a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely. And we met our uniform provider at a PTAA vendor trade show, and now they know what we need before we know what we need. It's a great partnership. It really is.
Yeah. Well, last thing I want to ask you about, and we've talked about the company, talk about the benefit to you a little bit, but let's expand on that. For you professionally, for you personally, what, and if you were talking to a young, like some of your team members, especially if you had somebody who was relatively new, and they were questioning whether they should spend any time, do I really need to go to a class, or do I really need to go to even to a networking event? Could you talk a little bit about the personal benefit you see from it?
So it's personally how I've met people who I've become friends with. It's how I've met partners that we do business with. It's business changing. I've met other people in my position at other management companies, and we trade ideas. How do you do this? How do you do that? That I'd be lost if I hadn't made those relationships. And you don't go to the meetings looking for those things. They just evolve. One year we're in DC waiting on our senator to show up, and it's frigid cold. And we wait and we wait and we wait. But in that time, I'm getting to talk to 2 or 3 people. We came up with some really great ideas for maintenance and for some financial reporting that I hadn't thought of. So we brought those back and have implemented them. So it's the moments you don't really plan on that have the most value. They're fascinating, and that makes life easier.
I agree. Well, Tom, any other thoughts? I mean, this has been great. This is exactly what we're looking to do.
No, I just, I wish everybody could see the value and participate. I think one of the beauties is that even though we've grown, we've tried to keep things intimate, and so you still have an opportunity to network with more peers rather than being in a group of 600 people trying to figure out where do I go next. And that's nice also when you're at the national events, but just having local, you've all got a common story. You've got a common need, and it's pretty neat to see it happen. They all come together.
It is. I agree totally. Well, Tom, thank you so much. I appreciate this.